Meine Freund, jung und alt, kommt mit mir auf ein Spazier durch den Wärterwald. Wärterwald, was ist das? Ist ein Krug, ein Bäum voll mit Blätter, ein Wald von Wärter. Das ist ein Blatt, Blätterle. Blätterle. Wow. Shalom Aleichem, Chaverte Cherepache. Aleichem Shalom, Mikhl. Kommt nicht nennter wie 2 Meter, Chaverte Cherepache. Man darf annehmen die alle nötige Verkehrsmittel. Richtig. Das Blättel ist lebendig, wie Jiddisch. Aha. Das Blättel ist teut, wie Alltag. Oi, oi. So schön. So schöne Blume. Du sie an. Du bliest wie a Blum. Blieb. Oh, ich blieb. Es wächst a Buch in Bäum. Ernest und sprach. Wie das Groß und wie der Bäum. Ich welk und tu aufs Nei gedeihen. Und rührt mich an die Surn koim. Erwach mich in a Herrefeien.
Shalom Aleichem, teire liebhaber van Yiddish, dear Yiddish fans. Welcome to our Schmooze with Mikhl Yashinsky. You just saw a video clip of the multi-talented Mikhl. He is a Yiddish language instructor at the Workers' Circle Yiddish program and Trip to Yiddish Land, an amazing actor, playwright, and translator. Mikhl, schönen herzlichen Dank für kommen to share your passion for Yiddish language and culture in general and your special dedication to Yiddish theater in particular. So, how did you come to Yiddish and why it has become an essential part of your life?
Thank you, Kolya. It's a pleasure to be here and with the Arbitering, an organization I love and that I have roots with through my family, which is how I came to Yiddish, is through my family. My great-grandfather and my great-grandmother are buried in a worker circle Beis Oilem in Detroit, and my great-grandfather Joseph Weiss was a socialist, a Yiddish speaker, a reader of the Vorwärts, and that Yiddish passed down through the generations. My grandmother, Elizabeth Weiss, was both an actress and a Yiddishist, and her home was filled with Yiddish books and movies, and she lent these to me and taught me, and she was the first person from whom I heard the names of these Yiddish organizations. She went to the Yiddish Book Center in the 90s, a place that I would end up going. This is me with my grandmother and my grandfather that you may be seeing now. They were both actors, Elizabeth and Reuben Weiss. And yeah, my grandma used to get the Pakenträger, and I would see this magazine, Pakenträger, and I would think only my grandma would have a magazine with such a title that I didn't know what to make of it. It was a bit Hamish, but also a bit foreign and a world that I hadn't yet fully explored. And she really brought me into that world of Yiddish and of theater. And my parents, also bits of Yiddish in the home. I remember my mom, she would use Yiddish, my mother, Deborah, and then she would sometimes turn to us and say, let's try to list all the Yiddish words and phrases that we use in the house. And that would be something we would regularly do, I remember, on car rides, just listing Yiddish words and phrases that we used and knew. So it was from the home originally. This is me with my grandmother, and my grandfather was an actor in Detroit, played Santa Claus in the big Detroit Thanksgiving Day parade. I ended up directing my grandmother, which you see a bit of there, in an opera called Brundibar, a children's opera that was done at the Detroit Opera House that was actually from the Holocaust period. And I wrote a little play beforehand for her to act in where she read a Yiddish poem. So yeah, in adulthood, I decided I would get more serious about it and started sort of taking some formal Yiddish classes at the Yiddish Book Center. I went to the summer program, and eventually it became a sort of parnasa, livelihood.
Sehr schön. It's very, very quick but substantive Aranfir introduction.
Yeah.
Let's talk a bisschen wegen Mikhl, a Yiddish learner. Mikhl is a Yiddish teacher. Why did you decide to become a Yiddish learner? And did you have a role model? Who inspired you?
Yeah. Well, in college, I went to school at Harvard, which you saw a picture of me graduating on my graduation day. I didn't take Yiddish classes. I thought Yiddish was sort of on the back burner. And first, I thought I need to take a more important universal language, that being German. And I sort of dedicated myself to German in those years, but had very good teachers. And I'd say some of them were inspirations to me in foreign language teaching. Anne-Katrin Lange and Oliver Simons and Thomas Harold. These were some great Yiddish German teachers I had there, native German speakers. And I also took a bit of Russian in college, and those I found were very good teachers also. I remember Maria Yevgenyevna and Natalia Georgievna, and they were creative teachers and intense teachers and taught me a lot. I didn't end up taking Yiddish language classes there, but I did take a Yiddish poetry class with Ruth Weiss, who was there at the time, where it said in the course catalog, I remember, class will be taught in English, open to graduates and undergraduates. And it ended up being that I was the only undergraduate enrolled, and the rest were Yiddish grad students. And she ended up teaching the class in Yiddish, which I had a sort of passive understanding of at the time, couldn't really speak. So I stayed in the class and just got out of it what I could, and sometimes would contribute as much as I could in bits of sort of Deutschmarisch Yiddish. And yeah, becoming a Yiddish teacher really happened when I got a fellowship at the Yiddish Book Center after I had studied Yiddish for a couple of years seriously. And that turned into a 3-year thing. It was meant to just be 1 year, but I stayed there for 3 years, surrounded by wonderful people and working with Asya Weissman-Schulman and Jordan Brown on the Yiddish textbook in Eynem, which we co-authored. And I started teaching from that book, first as a sort of substitute for Asya at the Yiddish Book Center, and for her college course that she taught in Yiddish at the time, and ended up applying while at the Yiddish Book Center for a Yiddish lecturer position at the University of Michigan in my home state, which I got. And that eventually led to a sort of crisis where I had to choose between theater in New York and teaching Yiddish at the University of Michigan. But we can get to that later when we get into the theater phase. But yeah, this is my desk at the Yiddish Book Center, which is maybe just nice to see some of the things I was thinking about and looking at the time. Among them is a picture of me with my mother as a baby. And my mother is also a teacher. She is a lifelong special education teacher. So I'd say she's also an inspiration to me. As is my brother, my eldest brother, Gabriel, he took college Yiddish. And that was sort of my introduction to the idea that Yiddish could be studied in a serious academic setting. Yeah. Yeah.
How many years did you work for? You said that you worked 3 years, and all 3 years concentrating on creating this textbook in eynem, which is now used internationally.
That was sort of my latter 2 years there, was working on in eynem. The first year I was doing all sorts of stuff, translating bits of teaching here and there, writing articles for the website. Yeah, but eventually I just became my title there when I was no longer a fellow and a senior fellow. I was just Yiddish textbook specialist. And that was my my only work there in my last year there.
You remember your first Yiddish lesson you taught?
I remember before I started teaching sort of courses on my own with regular students, I would come and teach visiting groups of adults who would come to study Yiddish. So I remember other fellows and I teaching, for instance, Yiddish Aleph Beis lessons and introducing the Aleph Beis and getting people reading. And I remember playing, actually, I think you created this possibly, Kolya. we had a Yiddish bingo set
Mhm.
at the Yiddish Book Center that we would use for these Aleph Beis lessons. And now that I think about it, I remember it saying, designed by Kolya Borodulin. So
Yeah.
also an important early influence. I remember also meeting you when you came to the center in one of these programs and you lectured about Chagall and Jewish art, and you were very Lebedik.
Okay, so we are talking now about Mikhl Yashinsky, which is very nice of you to remember. And yeah, it's a very nice career for you, I think, as an English teacher. Which places have you taught so far?
So I've taught there at the Yiddish Book Center, and also as part of their course for the 5 colleges students, UMass Amherst and Smith and Mount Holyoke and all of that. And then I ended up teaching at the University of Michigan. And I've taught, of course, with the Arbeiter Ring, all of you, and with Yivo. And now I teach Yiddish at Columbia and have a wonderful group of students there. It's amazing to me how Yiddish students very often, including the ones I have at Columbia now, they're not only interested in the language as a language, but are interested, as they ideally would be, in the whole culture and civilization of Yiddish, such that I go to Yiddish events around town, or I perform at something, at a play I wrote, or at the Yiddish Kleztronica night, a sort of Yiddish electronic music night, and I see my students there in the crowd, and I interact with them outside of the classroom after Yiddish Gas on the Yiddish street, so to speak. So they're very committed to it, and they were all at the these students I have currently were all at the Worker Circle trip to Yiddishland last summer as well.
Mikhl, I think it's very exciting that you are in the center of this explosion of Yiddish teaching, learning, Yiddish experience, Yiddish culture, outreach globally, and you're playing a very, very important part in it. But you also, you're an unbelievably talented actor. When did you decide to become a Yiddish actor, and why? So what was your first role? In which place?
Yeah, well, yeah, while working at the Yiddish Book Center, I remember saying to friends at a party, people gathered, and one of the questions we all started discussing is, what would our dream job be? And I quite honestly said that my dream job would be to act someday on the Yiddish stage, because I had grown up acting in plays and acting through college and directing. I ended up directing a play in Yiddish with high school students that you see a image of there, that I did when I was teaching Spanish at my alma mater in my high school in Detroit. And I got a grant from the Fishman Foundation to direct a Yiddish play with the students, which we did, a one-actor. They didn't know any Yiddish, and I taught them as much as they needed to perform this play, a fantasy play by Schmooze, Noch 12 by Nacht, after midnight. And that was, and then I directed at the Detroit Opera House for a few years. I directed Brundibar, this play that I talked about, and what you see here is The Happy Prince, another play. Anyway, I had this professional theatrical experience, and then I came to have Yiddish experience, and my dream was really to one day bring them together and perform as a Yiddish actor on stage. And I had gone to see the Volksbühnes when I was in Amherst. I had gone to see their Golden Ekale, the Golden Bride, and I just thought, what a beautiful entertainment, this sort of all singing, all dancing, all Yiddish spectacle. And I thought, these actors are so good, and maybe someday, possibly, I could be among them. It was really mein Cholem, my dream. And I remember when I was at the Yiddish Book Center teaching, there was a group of artists from this organization called Reboot that came one week. And they were there just to learn about Yiddish literature and art, and hopefully inspire their own art making. And I was one of the faculty helping them find sources and teaching them things. And one group was interested in Yiddish and the occult, Yiddish and magic and fantasy. So I brought them resources having to do with this. And then in my research, I also found I knew about this opera, Die Kishifmacherin, The Sorceress by Goldfaden, a seminal Yiddish operetta. And I thought, oh, I'll tell them about that. And I started Googling it and found that actually the Volksbühne was preparing a production of it and looking for actors to come audition. So I thought, okay, great, I'll print out this audition notice and also show it to the group because there was an actress in it, Jessica Chaffin. And I thought, I brought it to her and to all of them. And I said, actually, you should go and audition for this. And it would be a wonderful fit. And they sort of couldn't help but laugh. They said, none of us speak Yiddish. We could never imagine being on the Yiddish stage, but obviously, Mikhl, you should go to audition. And I think I had that in the back of my mind when I presented to them, but I was actually just showing it to them thinking that they should go audition. But this Jessica, this actress who was very sort of funny and outrageous a bit, all week that they were there, she was talking about it. And she started talking to my supervisors and Josh Lambert, who was the academic advisor, academic director at the Yiddish Book Center at the time. And she said to him, you need to give Mikhl time off so he can go to New York and audition for The Sorceress. And eventually it became less of a joke to me and more of a reality. I booked bus tickets down to New York and auditioned. I remember I came into the room speaking Yiddish with Zalman Mlotek and Mottel Didner, these directors at the Volksbühne. And I sang a song, Der Dishwasher, that I had found among the sheet music racks at the Yiddish Book Center. And they said to me, where have you been and why didn't we know about you? Because here I was, this Yiddish-speaking actor. And so they sent me home with materials already to bring back for a callback, including the lover in the show, the tenor, and some other characters. But then on the bus ride back, I got a call from Jamie Beth Margolis, the casting director, who said, actually, also please prepare the Kishifmacherin, the title role of the sorceress, who's always played by a man in drag. So I did. I went and prepared that, and I bought a skirt, I remember, at a thrift store in Western Mass to go and wear to the audition for when I was playing the sorceress. And I gave it my best shot, and I got that role. That was my first professional role on the Yiddish stage, is the sorceress, which you're seeing here, which I've played a couple of times with the Volksbühne, and it's been really a tremendous joy. And a tremendous introduction to Yiddish theater as an actor. It was the first play that was performed in America, the first piece of Yiddish theater performed in America, and the first piece of Yiddish theater I performed professionally. So it felt really special. Yeah.
Mikhl, I need to share with you something very, very personal, because I went to see the play twice. And the first time I was watching it, and it's so beautiful. Your play, sets, everything fabulous. But it was such a overwhelming feeling. I was crying. And I was crying because in late 1990s, I was running this Yiddish week program at Sokoloch Camp Kindering, and I brought my mom, and Zalman came for the entire week, prepping this performance of Kishifmacherin. So she was my mom. She is in heaven now, but she had a beautiful voice, and she sang all these parts from Kishifmacherin.
Wow.
And seeing your play, I was both beaming with joy, but also crying. So just wanted to share it with you.
Thank you, Kolya. That's really special. And, yeah, we definitely think of our forebears and our ancestors all the time as we're doing these parts. I'm always thinking about my grandma, Leah Sholem, who was an actress, and people who have played this role before. We're always sort of in their footsteps in a way. Yeah.
So
I have a photo there of some men who have played the role priorly, Maurice Schwartz and Solomonesco and me. Because because the part is pretty much always traditionally played by a man.
Yeah, amazing, Mikhl. And this is one of my favorite shots.
This is just me making videos as the Baba Yachna, because I couldn't quite give up the character even after we closed the show. So I've made a couple videos as her just around the house, and had to throw together my own costume and hair and makeup. So that's from that.
So let's. I think we have some dignitaries. Yeah.
Yeah, this is Jackie Hoffman, who is an actress, a wonderful Jewish comedian that I played with ultimately in Fiddler on the Roof. And I left that production of Fiddler at one point to go back to The Sorceress and play in that. And that's what you saw in that photo there, where we're FaceTiming, and she's in costume in Fiddler, and then I'm in the corner as the Baba Yachna.
So I want to play a piece, a very little piece, to give a taste of Kishev Macheren.
Kim, Zimir in Stieb, hat's in der Kim, Zimir, heim! Kim, Zimir in Stieb, hat's in der Kim,
Sure, but oops. Wait.
That was a costume piece that always caused some trouble, that capture cloak, I think it was called, something like that, which this coat that I put on Mirele because she's cold in the marketplace, but concealed within the coat is a rope that ultimately I unfurl and use to trap her. But sometimes if we pulled too hard, the rope would just come out of the coat. It was always a bit tricky. Yeah.
So moving along and switching to another big production, I think one of the most successful productions, of the Volksbühne for the latest years, Fiddler on the Roof, Fiddler auf dem Dach, where you also play a very important role. Can you share your thoughts about this and your zichroines, so to speak?
Yeah. Well, it was when we were preparing the first reading of The Sorceress that the Volksbühne had their annual gala. And at the gala, they announced, we're doing The Sorceress now, but we'd like to announce that in the coming summer, we'll be putting on Fiddler on the Roof in Yiddish, directed by Joel Gray. And those combination of things, I just knew I had to be a part of it. So yeah, again, I had returned to the Yiddish Book Center to finish out my year there, and went again, took the bus to New York and auditioned, and was very honored to be cast in this ensemble of 26, doing this sort of historic moment in New York Yiddish theater, something that we really achieved a sort of mainstream appeal, and we ended up playing for quite a long time. And that precipitated this sort of crisis that I mentioned to before, where I had already gotten this job to go and teach Yiddish at the University of Michigan at the end of our summer, playing Fiddler in Yiddish. So I had to leave. We were just supposed to play for one summer, but of course we went on and on, kept getting extended. So I had to leave the production to go and teach, because I had already signed my contract to teach, and it was something I was passionate about as well. But at the after some time teaching at the University of Michigan, the production was moving uptown to the theater district, into a bigger theater, and they asked if I would come back and take up my role again. And I had to make a decision between teaching, continuing to teach in the classroom and this full-time job in Michigan, which could have lasted a very long time if I had wanted it to, probably, or come back and perform. And I thought, this seems to be just a moment for Yiddish that I can't miss out on, where we're really sharing a love of Yiddish with the masses. And I felt I couldn't stay away. And I justified it to myself, because I felt, whether in the classroom or whether on stage, it's almost the same work. It's sharing my passion for this culture and this language, and contributing to it. and lighting a fire to keep it going and to keep it the center of people's minds and thoughts and inspiring them. So I decided to return to the production, and I played Morche, the innkeeper, and Nachum the beggar, a couple of smaller roles, but a part of the ensemble, and being directed by Joel Gray, who I'd grown up admiring, was really something very special. And I had a wonderful time. There I am with Joel Gray, the director. One moment, which you see on the right there, is we prepared this sketch where we translated Broadway songs into Yiddish and performed them on this Broadway stage as part of this Broadway charity event. And so I translated all these songs to Yiddish for our sketch, and ended up having to teach one of them to Joel Gray so he could perform it on stage.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a song, God, I can't think of the song right now. But a song by George M. Cohan, and he had played that part on stage in Broadway, and here I translated into Yiddish for him, and here I am coaching him on the lyrics of it. So yeah, lots of special memories from that time. Sort of a magic year where my full-time job was just getting up every day and taking the subway to the theater and performing in Yiddish for a year. So to me, that's really, a dream fulfilled.
Great. So let's play a very short segment, so to refresh your memory.
Amen.
I recollected suddenly, and it was also such a huge experience on me, your playing in this new production of Volksbühne, Zwischenfall in Dick event. I forgot to include an image, but people who saw it were probably really taken by it. Can you say a few words about it as well?
Yeah, there we were performing songs from the Churban, from the Holocaust, songs from the camps and ghettos. And yeah, in this sort of quite moving, marvelous setting given to them by the Mloteks and Motl Didner. And yeah, it was a small ensemble of 8 actors, 8, I think. And yeah, getting to know this music was really just a privilege for me. I knew a lot of it before, but had to learn a lot more. I was the sort of 4th man in the ensemble of 4, and then had to learn all 3 of the other men's parts because I was the primary understudy for all of them, the only understudy for all of them. So I had to learn basically half the show, every male role, all of the choreography and the singing. It was among the most challenging things I've had to do in the theater. Some of my castmates would sometimes say to me, "Oh, you've got it, you know Yiddish," but which does help, of course, but it's not everything. Yeah, because it's this interesting thing in the Volksbühne that not everyone, most people actually who perform with the Volksbühne aren't Yiddish speakers. So that's been a special sort of added privilege of working with them, that I in some ways get to be the bearer of Yiddish knowledge to my castmates, and to have the chance to help them quite a bit with the language in a sort of unofficial way behind the scenes. I remembered, just in case people want to know, the song I taught Joel Gray was Give My Regards to Broadway, which I translated into Yiddish for Joel Gray, and he performed on this Broadway stage, the Niederlander, where Lion King is performed.
Du
Maybe I'll
gedenkst? Du
Ja,
gedenkst es?
ja, ich will singen ein paar Schures von dem. Is
Sehr
give my
schön.
regards to Broadway, remember me to Herald Square, tell all the gang at 42nd Street that I will soon be there. Is geht das so? Get up, mein Gruß zu Broadway, der Mond mich dort in Herald Square. Sagt meine Freund auf 42. Ich komm, ich schwör.
Yeah, bravo, Mikhl.
I remember particularly having to teach Joel Gray 42. He had particular trouble with, but got it out beautifully in the end. Yeah.
Great. So very beautiful memories. Mikhl, now about more Mikhl as a playwright. This is one of your one of the first, right? Real Yiddish play production, yes?
Yes, this is a play I wrote and submitted to this festival called the Lower East Side Play Festival, where they were specifically putting on plays set on the Lower East Side of New York, and they were going to perform them at this historic tenement synagogue on the Lower East Side, the Stanton Street Synagogue. And wrote this play for the festival. They said the Lower East Side is a multilingual place, so feel free to write your play in any language. And I wrote it in Yiddish, thought, why not? And we'll see. And they ended up choosing it as one of there were many, many submissions, and it was, I think, over 150 I heard, and it was one of the 6 plays that were chosen and performed in this festival. And this was a sort of strange little play set in the month of Adar, the Purim month, where strange hijinks take place traditionally. And there was one called Machana Mishanichnes, where yeshiva students, yeshiva boys, would, as a gang, grab another yeshiva boy and hold him down as they spanked him while singing Mishanichnes Adar Marbin Besimche. When you enter the month of Adar, your joy increases. And this was called Machana Mishanichnes. And I read about that in Weinreich's Geschichte von der Jiddischer Sprach, History of the Yiddish Language, while I was at the Yiddish Book Center, and wrote it down, this custom. And I thought, someday I need to make a play about this. And I did. And that was the subject of this play. It takes place on Rosh Chodesh Adar, when this custom would be carried out, and imagines these boys doing it and what sort of strange emotional impacts it has on them. And that was Was fließt durch ein Adar. What it has a sort of double meaning, the title. It could mean what flows through Adar, that is the month of Adar, or what flows through the veins, because Adar is also vein, as in blood in Yiddish. So that was that. And that was a one actor, a short play that you see these actors, Kostya Shapiro-Churin and Andriusha Kuznetsov and Corbin Allardyce were the 3 guys who acted in that. Max Friedman played trumpet. And yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Now to a big thing. You wrote a Shpogelnai, a brand new Yiddish play, psure loyt khaim, gospel according Chaim, and you starred also in it. You starred.
Yeah.
It was I was very impressed with its quality and your passionate, convincing acting. Can you tell us about the genesis of this project? Why did you choose such an unusual and controversial topic, and how much did it take to create your first baby?
Yeah.
I mean, full-time baby.
Speaking of which, should we talk about this Nias, Kolya, or
no, we'll skip it. Or if you want. It's coincidence, yes.
Well, an enormous mazel tov is due to Kolya for the birth of his first grandchild. Kenan or a very sweet-looking baby girl is mazel tov.
Hartstikke dank, Mikhl. Now to the psure.
Yes. Yes. Actually, just one more funny thing about that. You sent me these pictures today of the baby girl and you with her in the hospital. And I thought, is the event going to happen today? Because it seems Kolya is at the hospital with a baby girl. So, but it is happening. Yes, the psure Chaim. It seems I keep saying that things originated during my time at the Yiddish Book Center, but I have to say it again because this is true of this play as well. I think it's inevitable that I spent 3 years working full-time at the Yiddish Book Center, and that's a place where you're surrounded by people passionate about Yiddish literature and culture, and you're surrounded by books and archival documents, and literally on every side of you are shelves and shelves of old Yiddish books. So I think I couldn't help but just be inspired by so many things continually there, things that continue to fire my own creative work. But yeah, while I was at the Yiddish Book Center and we were learning to give tours of the center, one of the things we gave a tour of was our druckerei, our sort of Yiddish print shop at the Yiddish Book Center, which is a collection of Yiddish printing machines and sets of type. And we learned that one set of type belonged to this man, Chaim, who was a Jew who found his way to a faith in Jesus and ended up translating the New Testament into Yiddish and marketing it around to Yiddish publishers. But no Yiddish printer would help him because the project was so controversial, because he was a missionary. He wasn't just doing it to create a literary work, he was doing it to convert Jews. And he ended up having to buy his own set of movable type and his own machines and set and print the work on his own together with his wife, who was raised Amish. And that was his type there at the Yiddish Book Center. It was donated by his wife to the Yiddish Book Center after his death. And I found his New Testament there, of course, which they had many copies of. And I started writing the play there while I was at the Yiddish Book Center. I wrote the first few pages. And they're the first few pages that remained in it until the present day, when there's a Yiddish printer, I imagine, called Gabe, and he's sitting in his shop and he's singing a Yiddish song about how he has no work. And in comes Einspruch with this project for him. And that leads to this real dilemma, and crisis of faith. And that was the genesis of this work. Eventually, I sent it to David Mandelbaum, the director of the New Yiddish Rep, who was very interested in it and said, let's put it on. He said, so rarely are brand new plays written in Yiddish, completely original, not translations or adaptations or anything like that. And he wanted to do it. And we had a reading of it. And in the small studio space of the New Yiddish Rep, it was packed for these 2 readings. And he said, let's now do it. That was in March of last year. And he said, let's now put it on the calendar and book a theater for doing it in December, during Hanukkah and Christmas time, which is the most appropriate time for a play like this, which is set during that time and is also about the collision of cultures and religions that take place in America around that season. And we did it. And yeah, it felt like a sort of, a kind of historic moment. A lot of people were saying it's the first play written and performed like this in America for decades, an original Yiddish language drama. And a lot of people came out to see it. And the best thing was really they would stay after the performance always and linger in the lobby, just talking about it and debating the character of Einspruch. And they started out hating him and came to understand him. A lot of people said. A lot of people were not who saw the play, as far as I could tell, but people who heard about the play. I would see them writing online, how dare they write a play about this subject, and we would never care to see a play about this, without realizing that the play isn't a promoting this man's views. It's just presenting to the audience this interesting cultural moment and this interesting sort of predicament that these 3 characters find themselves in. So yeah.
So interesting, Mikhl, again, so intertwined. So I came to see the performance, and I met there 3 Yiddish teachers: Sheva Zucker, Paula Teitelbaum, and Eve Yachnovitz. And so we were all sitting together, enjoying, laughing, and schreien, also Great, bravo, Mikhl. So more of these works, and let's see a short clip.
Sure.
Oops, let me see if I can.
Es geht, wie heilt sich das Filler? Sie hält sich beim Anhängen, mit Alef, Tfille. Natürlich, es geht. Man nimmt zum Beispiel den Setzhaken in der Hand. Man klopt das an Oss und man legt es weg in den Setzhaken. An Oss noch an Oss, bis man hat eine ganze Schiene. Nimm die Setzhaken, das Haken. Nummern. Jetzt gehe ich nach Pascal von dem Setzgast. Gefunden. Jetzt leg ich mal weg in meinen Hecker. Weggelegt? Oh, ihr meint ja nicht von. Jetzt darf ich mir ab Lois. Lois Filler. Du siehst aus wie eine kleine Gerade, gut nicht abgestanden. Niedriger wie der andere Schriftzeichen. Wenn du nicht nur Schmiedwege mit Tinte, wenn man bei Farbe die ausgesetzt der Oisi ist, und es wird sich überrasen, dort noch ein ungewickten Blatt ab Lois. Gut, gefunden dem Lois. Jetzt leg ich mal weglegen in den Pascal. Nein, nicht auf links von dem. Du setzt mich Spiegelbild. Jeder Außenschritt kommt auf rechts von dem friedlichen Ost. So der aufgedrückte Blatt sich leinen von rechts auf links. Verstehst? Verstanden, Rebbe. Das bin ich nicht. Aber du lernst mich. Ich komme von der Sprache Sanse Chassidim. Und du hast mich schon mehr gelernt, wie der Sanse Rebbe hat getan allein lang. Jeder, was hat etwas zu lernen, ist ein Rebbe, nein? Kein Mensch gehört das Wort. Die Schlichen von Jeschua, seine 12. Bei anderen nicht gute Übersetzer von dem Bris Chadashia, von unserem Loschen, rufen an Jeschua Lehrer. Aber ist doch gewinn ein nein? Bei mir rufen sie ihn beim richtigen Namen. Rebbe, heimisch, ajo? Rebbe Jeschua. Es geht. Kennst du echt verändigen nach Schiele eine die Plappes, Rebbe? Schein. Der Händigt, gib mal guck. Nicht schlecht. Wie geht? Filler. Wie geht? Jetzt bringt das Heckel zu der Dosse gerannt. Das heißt bei uns Drick ist ein Krank. Lass fallen die Schiene, wie es jetzt ausgesetzt, du beim Käppel von der Kranke. Und schon, das ist der erste Schiene. Also setzt man die Schiene erst in der Heckel, in der noch in der Kranke, bis die Kranke von auch den Ausstell von der ganzen Sache. Also man wird noch leiden, in der Rest steigt auch. Wunderbar. Der Emes. Und noch im Käppel kommt der Text von der Pfille. Gott, von Avram Yitzchak und Yanke, weiß mir dem Emes bessig lehn, dass was gesäfer, und helf mir zu gehen in dem Licht, was du tust, bei mir anflecken. Amen. Das ist nicht, was ich kann, Amen für ihn. Aber ein koschere Pfille ist das, ein koschere Sefer im Ganzen.
Yeah. You see there,
Mikhl,
yeah, this sort of strange stew of this person, Chaim, who was in his faith a devout Christian, but very much a Yiddishist and connected to his native Yiddish and Jewish culture, such that he fills the New Testament translation with Lashon Kodeshizm and with words from the holy languages of Yiddish, and prayers that sound like Jewish prayers but are ultimately about Jesus. And I think this combination, which is true to who he was, made a lot of people. I remember someone coming to me after the play and saying they really loved it, but the whole time they felt very, very nervous. There's just something about this that makes people uncomfortable, and it makes me uncomfortable also, which is partly why I wrote it. Because I think something that gives you a bit of a shtoch and makes you a bit uneasy is maybe a good thing to write about. Yeah,
of course, yes, it's like really thought-provoking and incredible, Mikhl. Bravo. But I know that you have other real interests and passions, and one of them is translating from Yiddish to English and vice versa. Kannst du erzählen auf einen Fuß wegen deiner Übersetzungsprojekten?
Yes, I can talk about my translation projects. So this is a musical I'm writing. So
we want something early.
But anyway, yeah, so here's something I've recently translated, and this is the memoirs Zichroines von Esther Kaminska, die Mame von Jiddischen Theater. She wrote and did not complete before her death her memoirs. This was a pioneering Yiddish theater actress raised in the shtetl who broke away from her very pious family and found her way to the Yiddish stage, which was her calling. And she writes this wonderful memoir about it that was published in Der Moment, newspaper in Warsaw after her death, in installments. And Elisa Quint and Miriam Chaya Siegel, they were putting together an anthology of works related to Yiddish actresses, women on the Yiddish stage. And they asked if I would translate part of the memoir for this project. So I started translating it, and the idea was to maybe find the most interesting portions and put them in part of this anthology. But I found it easier to just go through the whole thing, translate my way through the whole thing, and it ended up being very fascinating. So it took years and was riesige Arbeit, a sort of Herculean labor, but ended up translating the whole thing, and it ended up being that it wouldn't be part of this anthology, but would be its own standalone work as part of this series. Elisa Ben-Porad and Elisa Quint are editing with Bloomsbury that's called Yiddish Voices. And the first book is already out in it. It's a collection of plays written by women. And the second, Mirz Hashem, will be my translation of Esther Rachel Kaminska's memoirs. Which, Kolya, should I read a bit of it now?
A bit, yes, just to give us a little bit of time.
All right, so this is, I thought, relevant because it has to do with Pesach. This is her in her shtetl before she ever goes on to some career on the stage, and she's talking about how they would prepare for Pesach in their shtetl, which is coming up. When Passover came around and we needed matzah, we did not go about it the way they did in the big cities, where people would simply buy matzah, would bring their flour to someone who would bake matzah for them. No, for us, it was quite different. Before Passover, the mistresses of every home, even the richest ones, would rent out themselves or their daughter as assistants. That is, every married lady or young woman would have to go to 10 or 12 homes to help roll out matzahs, and then those ladies whom they had helped would go then to help the others. For example, I had to help roll out matzahs for 10 or 12 ladies, and then those ladies or their daughters would be expected to come to our home to help with ours. For me, being rented out as a helper was easier work than for anyone else, for it was well known in Porozove, her shtetl, that Rachel, that is herself, Esther Rachel, that Rachel, Chaim and Vichna's daughter, could roll out matzah dough better than any of the other girls. I even found the work pleasant. All the mistresses would come calling for me, and I would have to get up every morning at dawn, for the rich families used to bake their matzahs early in the oven's first load of the day, and remain on my feet, rolling out dough for 3 hours or so, sometimes twice a day. Later, when it was our turn to bake matzah, I had to go running around to call up our own helpers and tell them it was time. Once we had finished it all, with God's help, I had one additional task, rolling out our rabbi's special shmura matzah, for only young girls like me could be employed for that duty. I took part in it every year, going to the rabbis with the other young girls and rolling out his matzah. And she goes on, and I think, eventually she would go and the rabbi would make sure that no dough was left on the cutting board or in the rolling pins because no chametz could be left over. And there in this cleaning, in this too, I was exceptional, she writes. The rabbi himself used to say that my work was the most kosher as well as the most beautiful. And I think this is a sort of revealing for the tone of the work. She always has this great confidence in herself. And I wouldn't say it's boastfulness, but she believes in her own talents. And even as a young girl, it couldn't just be that she's rolling out matzah and that's something she does. She has to be the very best at it. So a very conscientious girl growing up into quite a committed artist, Esther Rachel Kaminska.
So when we'll be able to order the book?
I think possibly it can be pre-ordered now if you search Esther Rachel Kaminska, Yashinsky, Bloomsbury, who knows? hopefully, Meretz Hashem, it will be coming out possibly towards the end of this year. We'll see.
I'll look now. I'm really very interested in Esther Rochel Kaminsky, as you know. But I know also that such a creative person as Mikhl Yashinsky cannot sit still. What are you working, like you're probably working on several projects. Can you share with us what they are?
Yes. Now that translation is completed, I'm working on another translation for the Yiddish Book Center. They'll be publishing Meretz Hashem through their White Goat Publishing Press, the stories of Max Spitzkopf. I don't know if I put a picture of that there, maybe not. Anyway, no, I forgot to. But Max Spitzkopf was called Der König von die Detectives, der Wiener Sherlock Holmes, the king of the detectives, the Viennese Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, yeah.
These were stories by this guy, Joine Kreppel, who was killed ultimately in Auschwitz. But in the 1910s, he wrote this series of detective stories of Max Spitzkopf, who they're sort of wild, scandalous, lurid tales, each about 35 pages long. There's 15 of them. And, you know, Max Spitzkopf and the case of the blood libel, Max Spitzkopf and the case of the girl kidnapped and converted to Christianity, Max Spitzkopf and der Mädchenhändler, the trafficker in women. A lot of them are having to do with Jewish crises at the time, things that concern Jewish people, and he's always there, Max Spitzkopf, coming to the rescue, sort of a superhero of the time. And they were very popular in their day, not much remembered now. And when they are remembered, it's because of a quotation in Bashevis. Isaac Bashevis Singer in his memoirs wrote that the literature he read as a child and that ultimately inspired him to become a writer were the stories of Max Spitzkopf. And as a youth, those were the most exciting bits of literature for him and that inspired him to become a writer. So now the world will get a chance to read these things that you can only find because they were printed so cheaply as sort of pulp fiction. You can only find them in a couple archives in Yiddish. And now a lot of people will get the chance to see what these were. And
can't wait.
Yeah, and then this is a musical I'm currently writing. I was a fellow with this organization called LABA, the Laboratory for Jewish Culture, last year. And the theme for the year for us 10 artists was taboo. We had to start creating a work that had to do with taboo. So my idea was to write a brand new Yiddish musical about sinners. And this would be a sort of, the way I'm imagining it, I'm writing it together with the klezmer band Mama Liga. My friends are writing music and I'm writing words, spoken lyrics. And it's, the idea is a sort of, we're making it up as we go, but it's a sort of criminal gang. And what makes this gang particular is they're each member is committed to carrying out crimes related to one of the great categories of sins in Judaism. And the Vilna Gaon tells us there are 7 central categories of sin in Judaism from which all other sins derive. And they come together in one night and celebrate their sort of criminal undertakings. And yeah, I thought I could sing a bit of one song. This is Taibel, who opens the show, we're thinking, with she represents the sin of Taive, Taibel di Baltaivenitze. Taibel, who is a sort of gluttoness. She represents the sin of Taiva, which is too much lust and passion and sort of an overflow of desire for something, and often food or whatever it is, some carnal passion. So she sings a song, she's preparing the feast in her home and preparing roast meat that we don't learn until the end what it is. And yeah, so I'll sing it for you as best I can without accompaniment. So this is her Iber Chazer Lied, her cumulative song. Cumulative song is a song that keeps repeating structures. And I thought a song like this with this repeating of steps and all of that seems like it could be well suited to a recipe, that I could relate a recipe for a food through such a song. So that's what I did. All right. Salz und Pfeffer, komm du Treffer, Knobelstoch, treff, was ich koch. Salz und Pfeffer, der Baschäfer, Hackel, Knackel, Zadig, Kufresh, wie heißt der Eilenfleisch? Wie heißt der Eilenfleisch? Baschmir mit Gänsenschmalz, soll sein Kruchiker von Alz, soll sein Fettiger von Alz, Kruchiker von Alz, Fettiger von Alz, soll sein Kruchiker von Alz und Fettiger von Alz. Salz und Pfeffer, komm du Treffer, Gicherheit, treff was sich greit. Salz und Pfeffer, der Baschäfer, Hackel, Knackel, Zadig, Kufresh, wie heißt der Wirzenfleisch? Wie heißt der Wirzenfleisch? Mit Paprikele und Simring und Baschmir mit Gänsenschmalz. Soll sein Kruchiker von Alz, soll sein Fettiger von Alz, Kruchiker von Alz, Fettiger von Alz, soll sein Kruchiker von Alz und Fettiger von Alz. Salz und Pfeffer, komm du Treffer, Lend und Ripp, treff was ich knipp, treff was ich knipp. Salz und Pfeffer, der Baschäfer, Hackel, Knackel, Zadig, Kufresh, wie heißt der Stoppenfleisch? Wie heißt der Stoppenfleisch? Mit Reute, runde Äpfel und Paprikele und Simring und Baschmir mit Gänsenschmalz, soll sein Kruchiker von Alz, soll sein Fettiger von Alz, Kruchiker von Alz, Fettiger von Alz, soll sein Kruchiker von Alz und Fettiger von Alz. Salz und Pfeffer, komm du Treffer auf Gottes Barott, treff was ich Brot, treff was ich Brot. Salz und Pfeffer, der Baschäfer, Hackel, Knackel, Zadig, Kufresh, wie heißt der Brottenfleisch? Wie heißt der Brottenfleisch? Auf a Brotspieß auf den Flamm, mit Reute, runde Äpfel und Paprikele und Simring und Baschmir mit Gänsenschmalz, so sein Kruchiker von Alz, so sein Fettiger von Alz, Kruchiker von Alz, Fettiger von Alz, so sein Kruchiker von Alz und Fettiger von Alz. Salz und Pfeffer, komm du Treffer mit Fetz, Assach, treff was ich mach, treff was ich mach. Salz und Pfeffer, der Baschäfer, Hackel, Knackel, Zadig, Kufresh, wie heißt der Essenfleisch? Wie heißt der Essenfleisch? So rinnen über der Bord, von a Brotspieß auf den Flamm, mit Reute, runde Äpfel und Paprikele und Simring und Baschmir mit Gänsenschmalz, so sein Kruchiker von Alz, so sein Fettiger von Alz, Kruchiker von Alz, Fettiger von Alz, so sein Kruchiker von Alz und Fettiger von Alz. So sein Kruchiker von Alz, so sein Fettiger von Alz, so sein Treffener von Alz. Salz und Pfeffer, komm du Treffel, Salz und Pfeffer, komm du Treffer, Juch, Juch, Koch, schein mein Schwein. And then we get this reveal at the end. She unveils the whole time cooking a roast pig.
As a Vorspeis, we are all hungry. We really, you know what to finish your presentation with. So
Yes.
people should go essen Gesundheit.
Roast pork for everyone.
So like
Oh, really?
it went so quick. Like, I thought it was 15 minutes. It's already we are over an hour, and so grateful that you shared with us this beautiful face poem Neshoma von Mikhl Yashinsky. Hartstikke Dank, and so you should be blessed with more beautiful projects, and all of them should mikuyam werden. come true, and we should all enjoy them. And
Amen, amen. Thank you. I hope to. And
you see,
thank you,
people are
Kolya.
sending their love.
Thank you to the Arbitering.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to Borach,
Very
a hartstikke dank, dear, for your beautiful support as always. And we are wishing everybody beautiful spring ahead, beautiful, freilichen, kosher and Pesach is still time, but we are already preparing. And we'll be sending the recording with Mikhl shortly. Seid alle gesund und bleibt alle gesund.
Seid
Herzlichen
gesund.
Dank, Mikhl.
Ashenem Dank, Ashenem Hartzken Dank, Skvenem Achaya.